Resist the Empire, a libertarian view of the Star Wars universe. This is your one-stop shop for news, events, and topics in the Star Wars canon. From a libertarian perspective, here are your hosts, Brian McQuaid and Roger Paxton.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to Resist the Empire podcast. How you doing, Roger?
I'm fantastic as always. How are you?
Very well. Getting excited, man. We're getting closer and closer to two great things.
Battlefront 2 coming out in 2 weeks. The movie coming out in just a couple of months.
Yeah. So, when power is used in a non-consensual situation, it is a wrong, says George Takei regarding the Kevin Spacey situation. I agree with that. I don't consent to taxation as it is a power used in a non-consensual situation as well.
That's the problem with liberals is they don't see the inconsistency in their arguments. Yeah. And I love George Takei. He's a great actor. I mean, loved him in Star Wars. He's done some really amazing things. He was actually, when he was sent to an internment camp during World War II because he was Japanese. Yep. And the internment camp he was sent to was in Arkansas, not very far from where I was born and raised. And I mean, I love the guy. He does some great stuff, but he's completely inconsistent on this. Yeah. Force is wrong. The initiation of force is always wrong. Yeah. It doesn't matter who initiates that force, even government.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Threw that in. Build-A-Bear has launched a new line of bears for The Last Jedi, including a Porg. Are you getting one, Roger?
Of course. I'll have to get one for my youngest son, of course. He's Porg crazy. Speaking of Porgs, we were talking about right before the show started, and Kathleen Kennedy did an interview on the Star Wars show, and she says there will be baby Porgs in The Last Jedi. Baby Porg. Is there going to be anything cuter in the world than a baby Porg?
Right, because we already know before the movie started that the Porg is the cutest thing in The Last Jedi, right? But now there's baby Porgs.
Right. So could life get any cuter than that? My kid's going to want them all.
There's a Phasma bear. That's the one I'd be getting if I was getting one of these. It would be the Phasma bear. Yeah. And we're also dropping a link there for anybody that wants to get one.
Yeah, it'll be in the show notes. ResistTheEmpire.com, ResistTheEmpirePodcast.com/17.
So visit the new, we have the new PLP, Pax Libertas Productions Facebook group.
So, a lot of the podcasts I listen to have fan groups on Facebook. And, I didn't want to just really do one for one of our shows. So I thought, hey, I've got a podcast network. Let me just drop one in, have all the hosts from all of the Pax Libertas production shows in there, just for, fans to come in, check it out, say hi to us, give us some, ideas for what they want to hear on the show. And, because we do these shows, we enjoy it. We have a lot of fun with it, but we do it for the listeners. That's why we're doing this. Without the listeners, we couldn't do it, right?
Yep.
So we want to hear from these guys.
Yep. So that will be at ResistTheEmpirePodcast.com/Facebook group.
Yep. And that's a direct link. It'll take you right into Facebook, into the group. Just hit, join the group and we'll let you in.
Yep. So, Alan Voivod was nice enough, I'm going to hold this up for the camera, to give us each a copy of his new book, The Unofficial Star Wars The Force Awakens Trivia Book.
Yep.
That was so cool of you. Thank you so much, Alan. He has an awesome podcast, Star Wars 7x7.
I listen to it every single day of the week. It's seven days a week, 7 minutes or so. Usually it's about 10 or 12.
Yeah.
And it's great. Every day is something different.
Yeah, it's great, and we really appreciate that. Thanks. For those of you who are interested, you can get that book on Amazon. Again, it's The Unofficial Star Wars The Force Awakens Trivia Book, and it's Star Wars 7x7.
I actually saw him at New Hampshire, New Hampshire Granite State Comic-Con. We were on the way trying to get out, and I happened to see him, and I didn't have time to stop and actually meet the guy because we were in a rush. Yeah. But
nice.
Hopefully I'll get to meet him because he just lives like 45 minutes.
Yeah, he lives pretty close to us. Yeah, it was very nice of him. Yep. So we got 2 iTunes reviews this week. One from Paul. He was kind enough to leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Yep. He says talks about Star Wars too much.
Maybe Paul didn't know what the show's about. No, I've interacted with Paul quite a bit on Facebook. He's a pretty sharp dude. I like him. He's a pretty cool dude. So thanks, Paul.
Thank you very much. And then we got another one here from subscriber Hell Inmate from the United States. Love the name. A fun time for libertarian and other Star Wars fans. The hosts work to keep me up to date on goings-on in the Star Wars universe. They also give an interesting take on whether specific characters might be libertarian. They end the podcast with a synopsis of a show, comic, or book. As I have a busy life, the ability to listen to all these allow me to be Star Wars aware while being entertained and driving in my car. One of my top 3 podcast listens.
Nice.
Thanks, man.
That's awesome.
Recommended for all Star Wars fans who enjoy a different take on the canon. Thank you so much for that. That was a very nice review.
Fantastic.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, and if you want to hear your review on our show, every single one that we get, we will talk about here on the show.
Yep.
Go to iTunes and look for Resist the Empire and drop us a review.
Love to hear from you. Thank you guys so
Even
much.
if it's a bad review, we'll still talk about it here. We might talk
Sure.
bad about you, but we'll still talk about it.
That's fine. Yeah. So before we get started here, we have a huge special event. We hinted at it last week.
Yes.
And so we kind of got our details situated here now. So on December 13th, starting at around 10:30 p.m., we will be live streaming the two of us watching all 8 Star Wars films in order leading up to our fan event showing at 6 p.m. for The Last Jedi.
That's the first showing in New Hampshire. We're going to be there. Thanks to you getting tickets.
So we're going to be live streaming this on Facebook and our YouTube channel. You'll be able to view that at resisttheempirepodcast.com/live stream. And we're doing this. This is going to be a benefit to hopefully raise $1,000 for the Starlight Children's Foundation.
Yep, I'd like to raise at least $1,000. So Starlight Children's Foundation is a foundation. They go into hospitals where children are there for long term or they have terminal illnesses or whatever. They give them really cool, hospital gowns with, Star Wars characters and even, comic book characters and stuff. And they cheer them up and they give them video games and all this kind of stuff just to cheer these kids up. Yeah. Many of whom are probably not going to leave the hospital alive.
Right.
They do really, really, really amazing work. It's a foundation I've been following for years, and I really want to give them something. I really want, this 24-hour live stream we're going to do is going to be really rough on us because we're kind of old, but it's really going to be, a way for us to kind of help out an amazing foundation. So definitely check it out at resisttheempirepodcast.com/live stream. Like you said, we'll be starting that at 10:30 p.m. and we'll be going 24 hours.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is
not 24, but close. I mean, it's going to be around 18 hours.
Yeah, we'll be shutting it off about 4:30 or so to get a shower,
get ready to go.
And then we'll drive to the movie theater. Yeah. And then after the movie is over, my wife is going to take a video of Brian and I doing our first reaction after seeing the first showing of the movie. Yeah. So we'll also post that on Facebook and our YouTube channel as well. Yeah. So definitely don't miss it, and pull out your checkbook and get ready to give. We will be taking PayPal, and we'll also be taking Bitcoin and Dash as far as cryptocurrencies.
Yep. And we're going to try and come up with a couple things to try and make it a little fun as well for those of you who are going to try and stick around as long as possible.
Yeah, we hope to have some special guests show up.
We're going to have friends, come over, a couple friends,
and maybe some games. Some games that even you guys can participate in. So definitely check it out.
Tatooine Times. Here's the latest news you need to know from the Star Wars canon movies, TV shows, books, comics, and more.
Music always gets me pumped up every time.
Star Wars The Last Jedi, Adam Driver may have just dropped a massive spoiler. This is from The Independent. Rey's parentage remains one of the biggest secrets of the newest Skywalker trilogy, with director Rian Johnson teasing that the identity of her parents will be addressed in The Last Jedi, which makes it rather curious as to whether Adam Driver has actually slipped up and spoiled the whole thing in a recent interview with GQ, or whether this is all just one big misunderstanding. Speaking about his character, Kylo Ren driver related, I remember the initial conversations about having things skinned, peeling away layers to evolve into other people, and the person Kylo is pretending to be on the outside is not who he is. He's a vulnerable kid who doesn't know where to put his energy, but when he puts his mask on, suddenly he's playing a role. JJ had that idea initially, and I think Ryan took it to the next level. He then stated, you have also the hidden identity of this princess who's hiding who she really is so she can survive, and Kylo Ren and her hiding behind these artifices. Did Driver misspeak? Did he mean princess in hiding as a reference to a common character trope, meaning only the suppression of Rey's incredible abilities? Or has he accidentally revealed Rey is of royalty, a daughter to, let's say, Princess Leia, perhaps?
The only thing that I could, because obviously she wasn't Han's kid.
Yeah.
So if Leia cheated on Han and had a kid out of wedlock, I mean,
it happens in the real world.
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, but I don't think they would do that in a Star Wars.
Yeah, I don't think they either. I kind of think that it may have been the trope thing, but
I mean, those are pretty adult themes for a movie with Ewoks and Porgs. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah. So considering the new trilogy is too deliberately, according to some, mirroring past narratives, the idea of introducing a brother and sister to the story make a lot of thematic sense, especially considering the mysterious connection between the characters hinted at in their official bios. That said, the connection could be far more spiritual or Force-related. Kylo's internal conflict, as underlined by Driver's own words, opens him up to a redemption arc, and perhaps Rey's destiny is to save him. Well,
my thing is, I still believe fully that she's a Kenobi. However, I am willing to concede the fact that she may just be nobody. She may not be related to anybody that we know. She may just be some nobody that was highly Force sensitive, and she may have been, found early by Luke or something.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, it says here that it will be addressed. Johnson said it will be addressed. So we'll find out, and we'll find out in a month and a half.
So I'm either going Kenobi or nobody. Those are my two.
So The Last Jedi star teases gay storyline. This is from DailyWire.com. This week, Star Wars The Last Jedi star John Boyega teased a gay storyline between his character Finn and Oscar Isaac's character Poe Dameron. The 25-year-old told Metro that filmmakers have the responsibility to bring more LGBTQ inclusion both behind and in front of the camera. There definitely is that responsibility, but more the responsibility to hire those from those experiences to share their creative light. That's the pivotal thing, said Boyega. Because if you just hire the same sort of people, you're just getting the same sort of film. It's not wrong, but then there's a lack of variety. The Force Awakens star teased a Finn and Poe romance playing out in the newest Star Wars flick set for release in December, joking that the ball's in Isaac's court. I think that Oscar is always looking at me with love in his eyes, and I guess that the fans saw it. And then they realized that either he needs to chill or come out, he said.
Well, so I believe that there will be a love interest in the Last Jedi with Finn, but I think it'll be with Rose.
With Rose,
yeah. I fully expect that to happen.
Yeah.
It would be a really great thing to see because, let's remember, Star Wars is about romances.
Yeah.
The original trilogy had romances. The prequel trilogy had romances. Clone Wars had romances. There's always romances in Star Wars, and I think that we need that. And I don't think we're going to get that out of Rey and Kylo. I think that Finn and Rose will be what we see, and I welcome that. But mentioning the gay character, in a certain point of view, there's a story in there where Tarkin is gay. And so Tarkin is apparently a gay character, which I fully support. I believe that, there are gays in our society. That's part of our culture. It's part of our life. We don't see it in books and in movies the way that we should. I fully agree with that. My issue with it is that there's no indication of it anywhere else from Tarkin.
Yeah.
There was no indication of it from the movies, and there was no indication of it in his book, which really got in depth with Tarkin. And I think that Brian Sovereign mentioned this on his one of his latest shows, and that's kind of where I picked this up. And I agree with him. If that's going to be the case, I'm great with it, but give me some indication before just some random story in a certain point of view.
Yeah, for me, it doesn't really bother me if it's not in the movie with Tarkin.
Right, because we didn't see him much.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, so that doesn't bother me at all. In the book, it should have been in there if that was the case. And then I do kind of disagree with what Boyega says here, that the filmmakers have the responsibility to bring that.
I think that's silly.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. If there's something there, it's great if they do it. If there's something there, if it happens naturally, like my favorite character, I think, right now is still Sinjir Rathvelas, and he's gay, and that happens very naturally in that book.
Absolutely.
It doesn't change anything that's happening at all. It doesn't feel forced. Nope. That's kind of my worry more than anything.
I think that a lot of that was part of the writing too. The writer of that was so. God, my mind is totally blank with his name, but I really enjoyed those books. Now, a lot of people have given those books a lot of crap. I really enjoyed those.
Yeah.
Granted, there was a lot of material in there, and there was some stuff that wasn't great. But overall, I think it was a really good, arc getting us out of what happened in Return of the Jedi and towards what's going on with The Last Jedi. So I really enjoyed those, and you're right. That was a perfectly natural fit for that character.
Yeah. So, Star Wars 8, The Last Jedi. Does this prove Rey is the real villain instead of Luke? This is from The Express. Earlier this month, when the new trailer for Star Wars The Last Jedi was released, a poster followed. Fans were intrigued by Luke Skywalker, hood up and looming over Rey, representing the light side of the Force, and over Kylo Ren, representing the dark. Now an official poster has been released in Japan, which is very similar to the UK and US image, except for one major difference. Rey and Luke have swapped places, and now Rey is looming over both the Jedi Master and Kylo Ren. Following the trend of previous Star Wars posters, the villain, Darth Vader, Darth Maul, and Kylo Ren have traditionally been the biggest head looming over all the other characters. Since both Luke and Rey are in the position on different posters and both holding the light side blue lightsabers, it seems most likely that they're both conflicted. It's previously been rumored that a big revelation about the Force will be made in The Last Jedi. This has been teased by the idea of a gray Jedi who brings balance to the Force. Could this be Luke or Rey?
Well, see, I disagree with that.
But I do too, because they've already said there's not.
Yeah, I mean,
Jedi.
Dave Filoni himself has said, or was it Pablo? Maybe it was Pablo Hidalgo that said, I don't understand this whole gray Jedi thing. It doesn't make sense. There is no such thing as a gray Jedi. Either you're a Jedi or you're not.
Yeah. Certainly both characters seem to be going through an attraction to the dark side, as seen in the latest trailer, but fans will have to wait and see.
Right.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just tend to use gray Jedi because they don't know how else to describe the situation.
Right. It's something like the Bendu, who is neither light or dark.
Right.
But still, it wouldn't be a Jedi. Now,
Yeah.
would there be somebody who can tap into both? Sure. I mean, we've seen characters like that already.
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker himself tapped into the dark side a little bit in Return of the Jedi.
Quinlan Vos.
Quinlan Vos, absolutely. I mean, went
And
full dark.
Asajj Ventress, since we're talking about that.
Yeah, I mean, Quinlan Vos went full dark in Dark Disciple for a while, and came back out of it. Speaking of, do you have the news about him in here?
Oh, no.
Oh, I'll have to pull that up.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll pull that up while you keep going.
Star Wars fans think Boba Fett is alive in The Last Jedi. This is from Inverse.com. The oldest debate in Star Wars history might not have anything to do with Han shooting Greedo under that table. Instead, it's all about whether or not Boba Fett survived being eaten by the Sarlacc pit in Return of the Jedi. For years, fans of writers of Star Wars comic books and novels have maintained that Boba Fett wasn't eaten at all, but will that become canon? Some fans believe there's serious evidence to prove Fett is still at large during the time of The Last Jedi. On Sunday, a Reddit user pointed out that a few leaked images for upcoming 2018 Star Wars toys clearly depict Boba Fett flying out of the Sarlacc pit, apparently shooting his flamethrower at it. While the leaked images don't prove anything and may not end up being real official Star Wars products at all, it is an interesting choice. Why show Boba Fett flying around the Tatooine desert at all, much less next to the Sarlacc pit, unless he's making some kind of comeback post-Return of the Jedi? Again, Boba Fett truthers have existed way before Lucasfilm even dreamed of creating a new unified canon for Star Wars. In '91, the comic book series Dark Empire made it clear that Fett didn't die on Tatooine at all and was still a formidable bounty hunter 6 years after the Battle of Endor. In that timeline, Fett was hunting Han and Leia for the murder of Jabba. Subsequent to that, the rest of the expanded universe novels and comics continued to operate under the assumption that Fett was alive. Obviously, Dark Empire and all the others 90s expanded universe stuff has been swept away in terms of new canon, but that doesn't mean some version of Fett's escape from the Sarlacc couldn't still happen. The latest canon story to feature Boba Fett is called Added Muscle, which appears in the new anthology Star Wars book A Certain Point of View, which we were talking about last week. In the audio version, Fett is voiced by none other than John Hamm, which could indicate Disney is setting up Hamm to voice Fett in that rumored Boba Fett standalone movie. The question is, would such hypothetical John Hamm as Boba Fett standalone movie take place after Return of the Jedi? I'm assuming they mean before or after. Because if Boba Fett is alive during the time of The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, he'd be about the age of Han Solo.
Right.
So which means Snoke might hire him to do some dirty work related to Luke Skywalker, etc. So thought that was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Fett is a beloved character for someone having so few lines and so little, to do in the first bit, other than capturing Han Solo. He's a beloved character, and it's because of that whole mystery behind him. So I'm wondering if, of course, we're getting him in some of the comics and things like that. But I wonder if you give him a standalone movie, if it's going to take away some of that mystery, some of that air of almost invincibility that you get when you see, Boba Fett. You think, oh, he's a badass. He's, so.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not sure if I'm okay
not
with
sure. I mean, I guess it depends on how many people watch Clone Wars animated series, right? I mean,
Right.
because a lot of that mystery was going there too,
Sure.
right? So
the news I
able
was
to
talking
find
about,
that?
with Quinlan Voss, it's a YouTube video that I watched today by Collider Video. Apparently, there are there were some hints that Quinlan Voss lives and that he lives on past further into Star Wars, and that he's going to be coming back. I obviously can't play the video while we're talking, and I can't find an article supporting it.
Okay.
And I don't remember what the clues were. But anyway, go to Collider Videos on YouTube and check it out. It's called Jedi Master Quinlan Voss Lives.
Okay, interesting. I really enjoyed Quinlan Voss's character in both the book and the Clone Wars, so I would be super supportive of that return.
And of course, he had a small cameo on Tatooine in Episode 1.
Yeah. That is canon as well.
It is.
Star Wars, and this is a spoiler, rumored to attack Luke and Rey in The Last Jedi. In less than 2 months, and this is from comicbook.com, in less than 2 months, many of our questions about The Last Jedi will be answered, as the film will be hitting theaters. Until then, however, we will fuel the fires of speculation with a new rumor revealing that a group of characters only briefly touched upon in The Force Awakens will set their sights on attacking Luke Skywalker on the remote island of Ahch-To. Last week, an event was held to celebrate the film using iconic locations and landscapes in Ireland to tell its story. This press event also included showing footage from the locations, most notably a scene which appears to feature Luke being attacked by the Knights of Ren. The Knights of Ren are an organization who acted under control of Supreme Leader Snoke, with Kylo Ren himself often leading the elite killing squad. Their brief appearance shows them clad in black, surrounding Kylo in the middle of a rainstorm, which is depicted during Rey's flashback while visiting Maz Kanata's. The Hollywood Reporter described the video shown at the press event, saying it showed John Boyega and Oscar Isaac, as well as Ridley and Hamill, scampering up and down Skellig's steep hillside and shooting scenes in Oscar-winning production designer Rick Heinrich's breathlessly cantilevered Jedi Village, which was suspended 700 feet above the surf. Over on the message boards at Star Wars News.net, a user who claimed to have been in attendance at the event drew another interpretation from the footage describing Kylo and the Knights of Ren attack Luke and Rey on Ahch-To. Seems to be a prolonged battle, dusk into nighttime light. The Falcon takes heavy damage and some beauty shots over Ireland, presumably trying to escape. Luke joins Rey in the tree, and they're not alone. Both turn/look at a point while inside.
Interesting.
So whether this information is accurate or not is up for debate, but many members of the press who watched the footage might not have immediately recognized the Knights of Ren, having only appeared in one film for a few seconds. Recently, the Taiwanese subtitles for the latest The Last Jedi trailer revealed that, based on gender-specific characters used in the translation, Luke was addressing a male on Ahch-To, despite audiences having only seen him interact with Rey.
Interesting.
These clues come together to hint that Finn and Poe potentially head to Ahch-To in hopes of contacting Rey and Luke, only for Kylo and/or the Knights of Ren to intervene. We'll find out for sure when The Last Jedi hits theaters on December 15th.
December 14th for us. No. Yeah,
14th for us,
yeah.
but yeah.
I can't wait. Oh, now that's interesting. I mean, that opens up a whole realm of possibilities. Based on some of the things we saw in the trailer, I've been under the impression that that Rey is going to leave Ahch-To thinking that her friends are in trouble, so she needs to leave to save them, based on, hey, this is not going to end the way you think it's going to end. However,
this seems to hint that they're actually coming
right,
there.
that they actually come to Ahch-To, which will be a very interesting twist.
Yeah.
How they found him, I don't know, but that'll be interesting to see. But also that brings up the trailer that we'll talk about later, that scene where Luke is saying this is not going to end how you think it's going to end.
Yeah.
There's a reveal in the new Awake trailer that leads some different points to that. So we'll get into that in a bit in the show.
Yep. The Last Jedi, new revelations from Star Wars Creatures Boss. This is from EmpireOnline.com. The new issue of Empire comes hurtling towards a galaxy not so far away from yours this week, and among the many exclusives packed within, there comes a word direct from Lucasfilm on what we can expect of the fast-approaching Star Wars The Last Jedi, astonishingly only 6 weeks away. The latest issue carries an interview with Neil Scanlon, Oscar-winning effects genius who currently heads up the Creature Workshop for Star Wars, giving us some intriguing hints on how his work shaped the course of the Skywalker saga. One of the tidbits Scanlon revealed to us was that Porgs, the puffin-like birds glimpsed in the trailer, which have already caused a merchandising sensation.
That's exactly why they're in the movie.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. And I'm okay with that. I'm
That's
totally
fine.
okay with it. It's capitalism, baby.
Yeah, were at least partially related to the caretakers, the more sentient nun-like creatures who live on the island of Octu with Luke Skywalker. With Octu, it felt like the only creatures that would ever exist on this island were those indigenous to it, where very few other species and DNA would have reached them, Scanlon explained. So they're an extrapolation from the Porgs and have bird-like feet, but they're a further developed race. Scanlon also revealed that the Porg scene in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon with Chewbacca in the trailer is befriended by Chewie, as the Porg in particular shows some very Wookiee traits in the way he's colored. His patterning is very similar to Chewie's. As for the mysterious crystal foxes also spotted in the trailer, Scanlon offers some background on their origin. The theory is they've fed off this planet for so long that their fur has become crystalline. They've taken on the very surface of the planet they live on. Elsewhere, Scanlon teases a scene where BB-8 is on the run from his evil First Order doppelganger, BB-9E. There was this one scene in particular where BB-8 is in disguise and has to try and make his way without being recognized, Scanlon says. It just seems so threatening that his doppelganger would be the very one that may or may not discover him. For more on the new creatures coming to a galaxy far, far away, pick up the new issue of Empire on sale Thursday, Star Wars The Last Jedi, December 14th. Here they have the 14th.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, creatures have always been a part of Star Wars. And ever since the very first movie, and I love that because it really gives the universe depth and feeling, because creatures are all around us on our planet, so it really gives a lot of feeling and depth. And so it's interesting that we're starting to see some of that. I can't wait to see the crystal foxes on the big screen, because they look really, really cool on YouTube. So that's going to be really interesting.
That's the animal that I would want. I think. Yeah.
I'm surprised they're not wolves, though, because David Filoni and his whole fascination with wolves, which we see in Rebels the last last two episodes.
Yeah.
The HoloNet, your news source for current real-world news with a libertarian Star Wars twist.
So Clay sent us this article. City of Lexington files lawsuit against man over surveillance cameras.
Yeah, this brings back some hints to what we talked about last week.
Yeah. So this is from WKYT.com out of Lexington, Kentucky. Representatives of the American Civil Liberties Unions say the organization will defend a local activist who's being sued by the city of Lexington. The lawsuit is part of a dispute over information on city-run surveillance cameras. It started in July when Michael Meharry noticed new surveillance cameras at Berry Hill Park not far from his home. Meharry filed an opens records request with the city of Lexington asking for documents related to surveillance techniques. The city released some information, but kept back information related to 29 mobile surveillance cameras citing officer safety.
It's always what it is.
Yeah. They wouldn't release information on how they are deployed, what parameters surrounding. Nothing, Meharry said. Meharry took his case to the Attorney General, who ruled against the city and said the information about the cameras should be released. On September 29th, the city filed suit in civil court, asking a judge to stop the release of the records and for Meharry to be responsible for their costs. Now the ACLU is involved representing Meharry. We are not against surveillance per se. We recognize it has legitimate use for law enforcement purposes. Our concern, again, is no transparency and no oversight. That creates a potential for abuse, said ACLU representative. More like the likelihood.
Right.
A city spokesperson told WKYT's Victor Puente they couldn't comment on the lawsuit because it's still active. Meharry says he would like to see an ordinance passed by the city council that would outline how the surveillance could be used. It's just another law you're creating. I mean,
sure,
I don't know.
Of course.
I'm glad the ACLU is taking up this case, though, especially in a situation where this could clearly be abused.
And it likely is being abused. There's no doubt that, that's why you need to shine a light. That's, sunshine laws. You need to shine a light on government, or they are going to have the opportunity and do it to abuse these kind of situations.
Yeah, and they can be abused even in like non-law enforcement related things.
Yep.
So what's to stop some officer from starting a nice little blackmail operation off of something they gathered? It's not like it hasn't happened before. I'm looking at you, Long Island police chief and DA, if you haven't heard this story.
I guess not.
So these guys were basically using like GPS trackers, the one guy used a GPS tracker on like a political opponent's like car and stuff, and they're like trying to use like gather data and whatnot.
Wow.
It's part of like a much bigger issue, but yeah very interesting. So there's cameras like in Star Wars universe, but definitely more trackers used.
Obi-Wan used one on Boba Fett's on Slave One.
Yeah.
And, what was that, the second episode?
Yeah, so like they tend to be for like people that are really bad or really good individuals for others to target at a later time. But now that I think about it, it does seem odd that we don't see like more kind of camera activity.
Right.
I don't know if it's just because they're in droids and stuff or what. You know,
Right, I don't know.
I've always wondered about that. You know, because like, well, they have the technology, but it's definitely not used to the overly, you know.
Well, yeah, it's not like England, for example, where
every street corner.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, so Texas officials are forcing hurricane victims to pledge loyalty to Israel to receive funding.
Wow.
Seriously. Now, this is from the freethoughtproject.com. As the Americans who were affected by Hurricane Harvey attempt to rebuild their homes and replace their belongings, they have the option to request help from the city they live in. But residents in Dickinson, Texas, are learning that their city's Harvey repair grant comes with a strange clause. According to a document titled Hurricane Harvey Repair Grant Application Agreement from the city of Dickinson, in addition to a requirement that the applicant must adhere to all applicable rules, regulations, and laws, including building codes, safety rules, and securing of all required permits, there is also a verification not to boycott Israel agreement. And it reads as verification not to boycott Israel. By executing this agreement below, the applicant verifies that the applicant, 1, does not boycott Israel, and 2, will not boycott Israel during the term of this agreement. Former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney drew attention to the document on Twitter, writing, "It's true, folks. One has to pledge not to boycott Israel in order to get funding to rebuild your home." The American Civil Liberties Union released a statement criticizing the requirement and noting that while the city appears to be enforcing a recently passed Texas law that requires all state contractors to certify that they are not participating in boycotts of Israel, it is still a clear violation of the First Amendment. The Supreme Court ruled on the right to boycott in the 1982 case of NAACP versus Claiborne Hardware Company. As the ACLU noted, the Supreme Court acknowledged that the NAACP's decision to boycott a Mississippi business to protest segregation and racial injustice was a protected form of free association and free expression, based on the fact that political boycotts empower individuals to collectively express their dissatisfaction with the status quo and advocate for political, social, and economic change. These are precisely the freedoms the Constitution is meant to protect. As the Free Thought Project reported in July, the United States Congress is currently considering the Israeli Anti-Boycott Act, which would make it a crime to boycott Israel. That could lead to a minimum civil penalty of $250,000 and a maximum criminal penalty of $1 million and 20 years in prison. In addition to the problems that stem from the fact that requiring Americans to agree to not boycott Israel is in direct violation of their rights to free speech guaranteed by the First Amendment, it's also a broad term that can be defined in a number of ways. Does agreeing not to boycott Israel mean that one specifically agrees not to support the boycott, divest, and sanction movement against Israel? Or can the meaning be as broad as to include that one agrees to not criticize the Israeli government, the blockade as imposed on Palestine, or even the nearly $4 billion the U.S. sends Israel in military assistance each year?
Right.
In the following video, there's a video at the link as well. It has former Texas Congressman Ron Paul. He looks at the proposed Israel Anti-Boycott Act and notes that even some Americans who support the United States' close relationship with Israel have criticized the act for violating the First Amendment.
Well, of course, because, I mean, look, I neither support nor not support Israel. My feeling is I don't care about Israel. You know, Israel doesn't hurt me and it doesn't help me. The same as I feel about Palestine and Saudi Arabia and anywhere else other than, you know, my little sphere of influence here. But to say that you can't, I mean, I don't even know what this is unbelievable.
I know. So like if the entity offering this grant were a private company, I wouldn't see an issue with this, right?
Sure.
You just deal with a different company.
It's called discrimination. We do it every day,
right?
And for better or for worse,
right. Now it's being offered by a city government. However, it would seem to me this is a violation of First Amendment rights. But
no question.
I can't help but wonder if this is like some kind of trial for like further implementation of like something. This is some kind of test case. Like, what's your thought on that?
It sounds to me like they just screwed up. I mean, it sounds to me like somebody was trying to follow some laws and they saw this law about, boycotting Israel and they threw it in there. To me,
on an application it didn't really belong.
Right. To me, this doesn't sound like it was malicious. And I very well could be wrong. I mean, there could be, one dude in the, in this office that's like, ooh, I don't want to give this money to people who are against Israel because, all my religion and, our religions, have ties. Well, so do Judaism and Islam and Christianity and Islam, but that's a different story.
Yeah, you make a good point. I mean, maybe they were just trying to make sure they had all there because it says when dealing with contractors, they need to have this in there per that law. So I wonder if maybe somebody just thought this was part of that, and like you're saying, it was possibly an accident.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's what it was. I hope that there is not, and of course, I'm very critical of the government, but in this case, I hope that there's not some guy in government saying, hey, I don't want to give this money to somebody who doesn't support Israel, because that's just despicable.
Yeah, I feel like that's the path to forcing farmers off their land because they don't agree to sell their property. It starts at a place like this, this is kind of like the little pebble, something small, then the empire increases its tactics until eventually they become so brazen they just take it away from you. They don't care anymore.
Right. They take your moisture phone.
Something like this would actually be a good empire recruiting tactic as well, I would think, kind of how our current military is like, hey, you need 3 hots and a cot, we'll take care of you, just sign here, you agree to fight for us for a certain number of years. We haven't technically had a war in forever,
Right.
Absolutely. So, city restrictions won't let Denver mom sell home for market value. This is from KDVR.com. Home Sweet Home is now Bittersweet Home for Cynthia Lopez. The 35-year-old single mom bought her Green Valley Ranch home in 2012 for $150,000. While this is a great home and I appreciate it, I had something better for my daughter, and the city shut those dreams down, Lopez says. Just a few months ago, Lopez had a contract in place to sell her 1,200-square-foot home for $265,000 so she and her daughter could move to a bigger house nearby. I wanted to give the best for my daughter, and she still asks me, when are we moving to the bigger house? It's hard to make a 2-year-old understand that we have to stay here. Just days before the home closing, Lopez was told her home was part of an affordable housing program that Denver created in 2003. Out of 5,000 homes built in Green Valley Ranch, 642, including Lopez's, were priced as affordable housing. That meant 642 homes could only be sold to buyers who qualified as low income. But Lopez insisted she had no knowledge of her home's covenant restrictions when she moved in 9 years later. Nobody told me. I didn't sign any contracts. I didn't sign any documentation that's required by the city to be in the affordable housing program. My income didn't qualify. It was not in my title. It was not in my deed. Why do I need to abide by it now? Just let me sell my home at market value.
Government doesn't care anything about contracts. Are you serious? I mean, really?
Nothing could be found in the title documents that mentioned affordable housing restrictions. Nobody has an answer. Nobody had a straight answer as to how that can happen, said Michael Brenna, the real estate agent who was helping Lopez sell her house. Brenna approached housing officials when the city and county of Denver with them for help, but told the problem solvers he might as well have banged his head against the city clock tower. What Brenna said he was told is that Lopez could only sell her home for $186,000, $79,000 less than her buyers were prepared to pay, because the city only allows its affordable housing homes to appreciate 5% a year.
Unbelievable. Only government could screw something up this bad. Are you serious?
I absolutely understand her frustration, said Eric Sullivan, director of the mayor's office for housing opportunities for people everywhere. Sullivan said the city is aware of up to 5 cases such as Lopez's, where homeowners have been able to buy homes deemed affordable housing without going through the proper income verification process. The speed of some of the transactions in Denver housing market has created questions and misinformation, said Sullivan, who admitted the city didn't hire a compliance officer until June. As a result, Lopez said the city should grant her an exemption.
Absolutely they should, no question.
This is your program. If you have a program, you need to enforce it or let me out of the covenant. I want to sell my house, she said. Sullivan was asked if the city was in effect punishing Lopez for something that isn't her fault. And they said there's no punishment here because the review process is underway.
But she still can't sell her house.
Right. When Sullivan was repeatedly asked if the city would grant Lopez an exemption if the review process found she was not at fault and had no way to know she was buying a home deemed affordable housing, he refused to say.
Of course.
The city never told Lopez it was reviewing her case to see if the title company or the city might be at fault. Instead, 2 weeks after Sullivan's interview, a city inspector sent Lopez a notice of violation informing her she had 30 days to offer the unit for resale and she would have to list her home at the city's affordable housing rate of $186,000. So now they're like forcing her. Like, are you kidding me?
Wow.
Explain to me again. 30 days? This is the result I get? I've been asking for help. Let me sell at market value, and you tell me no, you need to provide proof of income or you are forced to sell.
Wow.
The notice of violation states that if Lopez's income in 2012 did not qualify as low income, and she knows it didn't, then she has to sell her home in 30 days.
Even though nobody told her anything about it being low income.
Yep. Despite Sullivan saying there is no punishment here, Lopez finds it hard to believe and points out she's been paying property taxes based on her home's market value.
Of course she has.
Yeah.
The government's not going to mess that part up.
No. That they're going to get right.
Right.
Yeah. Sounds like the city doesn't even know which properties are affordable housing, Lopez says. You're taxing me at market value. Lopez figured the worst-case scenario was having to stay in her house until 2023 when the affordable housing restrictions expire for all of Green Valley Ranch. Now worst-case scenario is I need to start packing and I need to move in 30 days. What am I going to buy? There's going to be no profit at what I purchased. This is ridiculous, Lopez said. Real estate attorney Robert McGowan looked at the Declaration of Covenants for Denver's affordable housing program. It seems crazy, and not only is it crazy, it seems illegal, McGowan said. It appears the language of the declaration itself exempts that property after the sale occurs, so somebody who buys outside of that process should not be held to the restrictions in the covenants. McCall said that because the city failed to enforce its own restrictions, it should exempt Lopez, not harass her.
No question about it.
She has no fault in this, and she is nothing but a victim, McCall said. All I want to do is sell my house at market value. Come on. After asking for a follow-up interview with Sullivan, after Lopez received the notice of violation letter, city officials are now refusing to discuss her case. Lopez hired McCall to file an appeal on her behalf and to represent her in front of a city administrator officer who will hear her case later this year. I don't even know where to start with this thing. I mean, how would anything like this ever stand up in court, right? If any individual claiming something that's not in a signed contract would be told, they'd be told to go pound sand by a judge.
Of course.
You know? I'm very curious to see the outcome.
Hey, Brian,
of this.
you owe me $100 million. It's not in the contract or anything. You just do.
Right.
So get over it. Where's my money?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's what they're saying here.
so
That's
crazy.
exactly what they're saying here.
Yeah. Now, if the city wanted to practice its oppression in a legal manner, they should have been able to get something into the contract, like at least get something into the contract, right? I mean, you're the city, you know, kind of how Disney is being super restrictive on theaters who want to show The Last Jedi by requiring a laundry list of expectations that they need to abide by or risk forfeiting additional take percentages, you know, that's all in the contract. So if you want to show the movie, this is what you need to do, you know?
And you're absolutely right. I mean, in the private market, without government involvement, this would never stand. Yeah. A judge would take about 5 minutes to look at this and say, see ya.
Yeah.
But because the government's involved, this is going to be drug on for years, I guarantee you. Yeah. There's no doubt that this is going to be drug on for years. And poor Miss Lopez, she's going to lose tens of thousands of dollars out of this deal, and it's the government's fault. They're basically stealing money directly out of this woman's pocket. Yeah. And
it's like essentially it's like price fixing, you know.
That's exactly what it is.
You know, and it seems silly because you're hurting the people that you're trying to protect as well when you do this kind of thing. I mean, if she had come in with a low income and, you know, whatnot, I mean, not having that in place, you know, at the natural point of the market, somebody like that could sell that property for more, you know, based on its value at the time instead of doing this program.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Now, if I'm a poor person, I buy the house and then it ends up being in a great neighborhood and explodes in value. Right. I have gained nothing out of that value other than 5% a year instead of the, say, 20% that I might have gotten, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, so now you're hurting the people you're trying to house. Right. Just don't get in something you don't understand, I guess.
Absolutely what I would disgusting. Say. And I hope she sues the pants off of them, and I hope, I mean, this will take years to resolve, but I hope, I wish her the best. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the universe should not actually exist. CERN scientists discover. Or rather not discover, I guess.
Right.
This is from Newsweek.com. The universe as we know it should not exist. Scientists working at CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, have said, after performing the most precise experiments on antiprotons that have ever been carried out, researchers have discovered a symmetry in nature that they say just shouldn't be possible. One of the big questions about the universe is how the first matter formed after the Big Bang. Because particles and antiparticles annihilate one another when they come into contact, if there were exactly equal measures of both, the universe wouldn't exist, at least not in the form we see it today. As such, there must be an imbalance between particles and antiparticles, even if it is only by the tiniest fraction. But this is not the case. All experiments designed to find this asymmetry have come up blank. This is also true of the latest, which were recently carried out at CERN by an international team of researchers. The findings from the base baryon-antibaryon symmetry experiment are published in the journal Nature. All of our observations find a complete symmetry between matter and antimatter, which is why the universe should not actually exist, first author Christian Smora from Japan's Riken Institute said in a statement. In the study, researchers used antiprotons that had been isolated in 2015. The antiprotons were measured using the interaction of two traps that use electrical and magnetic fields to capture them. The team was able to measure the magnetic force of the antiproton to a level that is 350 times more precise than ever before. If there was an imbalance between protons and antiprotons, this level of precision would be the best bet for finding it. At its core, the question is whether the antiproton has the same magnetism as a proton, said Stefan Ulmer, spokesperson of the base group. This is the riddle we need to solve. The measurement of antiprotons was extremely difficult, and we have been working on it for 10 years. The final breakthrough came with the revolutionary idea of performing the measurement with two particles. After finding no asymmetry between particles and antiparticles, the researchers will now work to develop even higher precision measurements of protons and antiprotons to improve on the latest findings. An asymmetry must exist here somewhere, but we simply do not understand where the difference is. What is the source of the symmetry breaks, Morris said.
All right, podcast's over. We don't exist. We're out of here. Fascinating. I mean, clearly they're missing something. I mean, clearly they're not precise enough to be able to figure out the difference. But man, how fascinating is that? That's really cool.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if it's a precision thing or if maybe they need to take a step back. Is there a wrong question being asked here? I don't.
Right. I mean, their premise could be wrong in the very beginning. You're absolutely right.
I'm not sure, but
what a fascinating story. I love stuff like this. I mean, I've always been a big, astronomy geek and, physics, and I've always loved that sort of stuff.
I can't help but think, right? So if you read this article as a Star Wars fan, does this not sound familiar to you? There's this eerie parallel between science's protons and antiprotons in the symmetry they speak of, and the kind of like the light and the dark side of the Force.
Right. So are the midi-chlorians protons or antiprotons?
Yeah. So the Mortis story arc and the balance in our Star Wars universe, it seems very balanced here. So much so that we shouldn't exist. No one likes to ask others for money, right?
Well, unless you're our wives, of course. They'd love to ask us for money. Yep.
But here we are, asking anyway. Why?
So we can continue to make Resist the Empire the highest quality and most entertaining libertarian podcast in your feed.
We have recurring monthly costs, and we put a lot of our time and effort into producing each episode.
So flex those free market muscles today and help us give you the very best show in the galaxy. To see the rewards that you can get, visit resisttheempirepodcast.com/support.
That's resisttheempirepodcast.com/support.
Which Star Wars canon character will we dissect in this episode of Galaxy's Smallest Political Quiz?
So, Brian, who are we doing this week?
Qui-Gon Jinn.
Wow. So one of my favorite Jedi.
Yeah, last week you said, we haven't seemed to have a libertarian in a while. So this week I was like, well, I'll try and pick somebody out that maybe is libertarian so we can have another one.
We'll see if you succeeded.
Yeah, we'll see. So Qui-Gon Jinn was a male human Jedi Master born on Coruscant during the declining days of the Galactic Republic. He was trained by Count Dooku. Jinn was considered a maverick within the Jedi Order, one who did not always follow the Jedi Code, according to his Padawan, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Jinn could have been a member of the Jedi High Council if he had followed the Code. In the years prior to his death, Jinn began studying the secrets of eternal consciousness after death, having long been a student of the living force. So we don't have a lot to go off of in Qui-Gon and canon, so I did have a hard time with him, but I did the best I could, so here we go. You want to get us started off
So
here?
the first question under personal issues is government should not censor speech, press, media, or the HoloNet.
Yeah, so I tend to agree on this one. Qui-Gon seems generally like a peaceful person who would allow people to have their own voice and direction in the universe.
Yeah, because that's one thing that you have to understand. The gun is always in the room. So if there are going to be laws against, if there are going to be laws censoring speech, press, media, and the HoloNet, there's a gun backing up that law. Because if you break that law, then men with guns will come in and get you. Yeah. So, I agree with you on that one completely.
So, so that's what
So the next question is, service should be voluntary. The Jedi policy on the warning of children who are force sensitive and the conscription of soldiers by the Empire is immoral.
Yeah, so I'm going to say agree on this one here as well. While he does get Anakin off of Tatooine, and it is partly out of self-interest, he does attempt to both get him as well as his mother off of the planet.
And he did ask Anakin's mother if she was okay with that. And of course, she absolutely was, as any mother would be, to get her child into slavery.
Right.
He absolutely asked for her permission.
Yeah.
There should be no laws regarding possession of weapons for personal use.
Yeah, I'd go agree here. He carries a weapon, and as someone who is so in tune with the living force, you'd probably be disappointed in somebody that's a pacifist, I would think, actually.
Probably, yeah. Of course, he hung out with, Padme. She carried a gun. Many people he hung out with carried weapons. So, yeah. Absolutely. Repeal laws prohibiting adult possession and use of drugs.
I'm going to go with maybe. Don't really have any examples to provide. He doesn't seem to interfere in things that don't matter to him. And being in a place like Tatooine, nothing really seems to surprise or offend him. But it's very, But,
he might be an overachieving do-gooder who thinks that...
Well, I don't think Qui-Gon's like that. I just don't know that he would have any interest in trying to repeal something like that, or stop that from happening.
I don't disagree. There should be no requirement to register as a force sensitive with the Galactic Empire.
And it makes sense that he would not want to require this, so I'm just going to go agree and move on.
Okay. So that gives him a personal score of 90. So, looking good for him being a libertarian. Economic issues. End imperial alliances with corporations and banking cartels. Corporatism is picking winners and losers in the marketplace.
Yeah, so I said maybe on this one as well. Qui-Gon lives in the here and now. He's very living force, so unless it affects him directly, I'm not really sure how much of an interest he would take in this kind of thing at all.
But he was a member of the Jedi Order, which clearly, of course, they were they government or were they quasi-government? Either way, they got subsidies from the government.
Or something. Yeah, and I do talk about that later in one of the other points, but I will say he often went against them as well.
He did, quite often. Yeah, that's why. Well, you mentioned that's why he did become a master. Yeah. In government barriers to intergalactic free trade.
Agree. I don't think he'd want a third party involved in his dice games.
Yeah, okay. Science and technological advancement should not be controlled or regulated by the Empire.
I want to agree here. I can't see Qui-Gon wanting a government agency to regulate his lightsaber that he built himself.
Okay.
That's kind of, I tried to look at it from the most personal point of view. Sure. So that's how I kind of came to that.
The career path of individuals in the planetary division of labor should not be dictated by the Empire.
Agree. Qui-Gon was all about the living force and being in the moment, letting the force guide him wouldn't seem to allow for this, as it seems to have a different path for everyone. Unless the force itself believed in division of labor, but that's a conversation for another time.
Right. I can't imagine it involved itself in those sorts of things. Yeah. Taxation is theft, including sovereign planetary funds taken by the Empire as tribute.
And I went maybe here, as a Jedi, as you pointed out earlier, there was either some kind of subsidy deal going on here. The guy had to eat, and he had a ship or whatever to do his missions and whatnot. So, I went maybe.
So that gives him an economic score of 80, which, 90, 80 is definitely in the libertarian quadrant. So, good choice. It's good to finally have another libertarian in the Star Wars universe. But the bonus question, did this character initiate Force in the Star Wars canon?
All right, so Qui-Gon, first off, he's one of my favorite characters in the Star Wars universe.
I agree. I mean, he is
one of my favorite Jedi.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's openly acknowledged how much he goes against the Jedi Council on a regular basis, and I relate to that well because I openly question authority, as we all should, and he'd be a good role model in that regard.
Sure.
He does cheat in a game.
I was going to bring that up, so I'm glad you had this in here.
Yeah.
Because that is an initiating force. He basically
Yes.
he basically committed fraud against Watto.
Yeah, so and an argument could be made that he essentially stole from Watto as a result of that. Now, that didn't break Watto. Watto broke himself, so we should make that clear. Watto bet against Anakin in that race, and that's why he was broke and destitute later on when we see him.
Agreed, but we don't know how those dice would have landed.
That's true.
If Qui-Gon had not changed that.
Yes, but for Qui-Gon's part in this, he definitely, he changed things and essentially took property. He stole property because that allowed them to get off the planet. That was the engine part, right?
Yep.
So he literally used the Force against the Force. He literally used the Force against someone here. To acquire property to allow them to get away. So I can't be sure he wouldn't do whatever the living force requires of him based on statements and actions taken. So while he falls in the libertarian quadrant, I would just say he's probably more libertarian leaning than actually libertarian.
So he's Rand Paul.
Yeah,
Rand Paul with a lightsaber.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Qui-Gon Jinn is Rand Paul with a lightsaber.
Resistance Review. Your favorite Star Wars canon movies, TV shows, books, comics, and more. Reviewed by our hosts.
All right, so apparently last night during the World Series, which I was not watching, I happened to see it cross my YouTube feed.
Astros won, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Houston Astros.
Whatever.
I'm not sure.
Is that I guess that's a
Sports
football
thing.
team.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, I do know they play baseball. I will say that. So the trailer was titled Awake. It was a 45-second commercial. And let me tell you, it's good. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely check it out. It's a really compressed version of what we've already seen. Lots of stuff we've already seen, but some really, really neat new shots as well. So it opens up with a shot of the Falcon on Octu just sitting there, presumably where Chewie and Rey landed it. It's dark, but then it cuts to the interior of the Falcon in the cockpit, and Luke is standing there in the cockpit, and he turns the lights on. And it is such a great shot. I mean, because he's looking around like, I remember this place. I've been here before. It was so cool. That was the best shot of the whole thing, in my opinion. It was really cool.
Oh, interesting.
So nostalgic.
I'll let you know my best shot later.
Okay. So it then cuts to Kylo, which we've already seen, smashing his helmet into the wall, and we've seen this. Then it cuts to Poe in that transport window, looking out the window, which we've seen, and then it goes to the ATM-6s on Crate. But then we get a great close-up shot of Kylo holding his lightsaber. Just all you see is his hand and the lightsaber. And it's followed by a very wide shot then of what appears to be Snoke's throne room, this bright red room that we've seen in some of the other trailers and stuff. And it's likely the on the Supremacy is what everybody's assuming, which is his flagship.
Yeah.
And it's got like 8 Praetorian guards, and Armada Chucks is standing there in all of his, his regalness. And over this, Snoke is saying, this is a new line we haven't heard yet. Darkness rises and light to meet it. Really good stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole dichotomy of dark and light.
Yeah.
So then it cuts to Rey and Luke, and they're on Octu. And Rey has a short clip of her swinging the lightsaber in a really awesome manner. I mean, it just looked really good. I mean, she really had some good training. They really did a great job with Daisy Ridley. We get some more space battle with Finn and Phasma, some space battle action. Then we get Finn and Phasma again, and we get a close-up of Finn's face when he's, attacking Phasma. Really cool shot.
I'm looking forward to that fight.
Yeah,
It should be fun. And that will not be the end, I'm certain of
No. I think that's going to happen early on. Matter of fact, I think that when we've seen the hangar blow up in the teaser trailer, I think that's when this is going to happen.
I should have been more specific. I don't think that will be the end of them fighting each other or appearing together like on screen. Like I feel like this will stretch the entire trilogy. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely don't disagree. So then we get, like I said, we get the space battle, Finn and Phasma, and then Chewie and the Porgs are in the cockpit of the Falcon, which we've already seen. Yeah. The Porg makes this cute little noise, but I can't wait to see a baby Porg. I can't wait to see a baby Porg. Anyway, As an aside, Kathleen Kennedy, we talked about it. She was on the Star Wars show. She mentioned these baby porgs, and my kid already wants one. He hasn't seen one. He just I mentioned, hey, there's going to be baby porgs, so I will have to own every baby porg variant.
He hasn't seen it yet, but he knows he already wants it.
Yeah. So after the movie, you'll probably see porgs behind me instead of Darth Vader, I'm sure. So anyway, when we then see the Falcon, and it's on crate this time. So we presumed that in some of the other trailers, when it's going through the tunnels and stuff, it looks like there's some red dirt, so it's probably going through crate. Well, now we know that the Falcon ends up on crate.
Yeah.
And Finn, we then see Finn in one of the crate speeders, and he does his woo. He's really excited.
Yeah.
Really great shot. It's then followed by, we see the shot of the tie breaking up on crate like we've seen in the other trailer. Then we see a shot of Leia on her starship on the bridge, and it's a different angle than we've seen in previous trailers. And she has this look of fierce determination in her eyes. And I'm almost certain that one of the people in the background is Billy Lord, her daughter. It very much looks like her.
That's possible. I've seen her in the photos already.
Yep.
Back there.
After this, the Falcon breaks out of the ground on crate and sends the dirt and stuff everywhere. So it was obviously inside the planet, which goes back to it being in those tunnels, which is great. Then Luke and Rey, they're looking at each other, and Luke is on the ground. He's like sitting on his butt, but he's kind of leaned back, like he's fallen or something. And Rey has her lightsaber out, and then she ignites it while Luke is on the ground. And then he says, shows his face, and he's saying, "This is not going to end how you think."
And that's my favorite shot.
How you think.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I mean, it's really good. But remember when we saw this in the first trailer, I made the case that, okay, he's telling her, look, don't go help your friends. I know they're having problems. It's not going to, go. But this tends to make me believe that I was wrong. I can't believe I just admitted I was wrong. It's extremely rare. Just ask Chris Spangle if we are libertarians, if I ever admit to being wrong.
You'll cut this out of the show.
Right. Yeah, there you go. But it makes me believe that there's something, really going on there that's not involving something outside of the because it really looks like, it almost looks like they had some sort of a fight. Now, is it a training fight?
I still think it's an editing thing.
Could be. But I mean, the backgrounds look the same. They look like they're in this cave. I mean, did she best him in training of some sort, or was she was there an actual fight between them?
Right.
I don't know. But anyway, all in all, it was a great trailer. It was super fast paced. I mean, it was, in my opinion, it was much more fast paced than the first trailer we got. Of course, they had to because it was compressed. A lot of new content, but without giving much away. And trailers are not supposed to give away the plot of the movie, even though we see that so much in today's world. We see trailers giving away plots of movies.
Yeah, we talked about this before we started. Yeah, and
I'm so glad to see Lucasfilm is doing this right. They're doing this, and they're keeping those secrets so that we want to go see it.
Yeah, I don't want the full story before I go to see the full story. Okay, you're getting me excited. But I still don't know what's going on.
Yep.
And that's where the audience should be with trailers.
Yeah, I'm so confused. I'm so misdirected, and that's exactly what they're going for. And I think that's what they should be going for.
Yeah.
We deserve to go into the movie and have our socks knocked off and to be completely and totally blown away surprised.
Yeah.
We deserve that.
And for us to have the chance to do that, they need to do things like this in a community that's constantly trying to find what we can find out about the upcoming movie. Yep. And so kudos to them, really, because they've done a great job about that ever since Disney's picked these up.
Yep, December 14th, folks.
Yeah. All right, so Season 4, Episode 3, In the Name of the Rebellion, Part 1. Picking back up with Star Wars Rebels. Kanan, Ezra, and Sabine, they're flying into Yavin 4. Kanan says the remnants of Phoenix crew is now a part of this rebel cell. It only takes a few minutes into the episode to see how big this party has gotten. We see Zeb for the first time this season after the crew land. Then Ezra asks Captain Rex, who's there, where Hera is, and he points out that Hera's coming into the base for an emergency landing with a few other fighters. Hera and her fighters get out and talk about how they received bad intel. We get a shot of Wedge after the landings talking with Hera, and Kanan says he's seen worse landings. Get it? Because he's blind.
Yep.
We also get to see Callus right after this with his new haircut and beard looking pretty spiffy.
Hot Callus is what they're calling him on Twitter or something. Hot Callus, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's kind of silly.
Okay.
So then we see Mothma, Dodonna, and Organa and the rest, and they're in the Yavin control room. And they're talking about the Empire's new communications relay setup in the Jalindi system, and Guerrera's intel was right. Of course. I mean, Guerrera,
so another
Yeah, I mean, he may have his faults, but he's definitely good at what he does. Ezra makes a comment about whatever, Guerrera did worked. Kallus states it's because he doesn't care how the information is extracted, and, Mothma remarks that they don't mistreat their prisoners, which, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Kallus says if they can somehow tap into their relay, then they could use it to monitor the Imperial fleet movements and obviously avoid them, go around them. Ezra asks about Lothal and how they promised them help. Mothma asks for a moment with Ezra, and she kind of takes him off to the side. And, she explains to him how the rebellion can't just, help every planet that needs it, because there's, thousands and thousands and thousands of planets. It's just not practical. She pulled up a map with all of the planets or systems under Imperial control. And when they did get into open battle, they were decimated, and how there are many difficult decisions to be made ahead. And, Ezra understood and, of course, thanked her.
Yeah. So in the next scene, Ezra sees Kanan meditating. Kanan said that Ezra is upset and asks what's bothering him. He talks about the Lothal situation. Kanan asks him to sit and find his center. He then pauses and said something else, because he can obviously feel something's bothering Ezra.
Right.
And Ezra says, when they were on Geonosis with Saul didn't care about politics and just wanted to fight. Kanan, he restated the mantra of it's not whether you choose to fight, but how you choose to do the fighting. And Ezra thinks maybe they're choosing the wrong way. So right then, a droid near them pops up a holo communications of Saul, and he claims the rebellion has weak leadership, and that's why they were defeated despite his warning. And then Mothma steps forward, and then she speaks to him and basically says, as long as their allies in the Senate believe there's a way for a peaceful solution, they'll continue to operate the same. And Saul claims the Empire sees both of them as criminals, but he's the only one that acts like one. And then she basically screams at him and says, they kill civilians and those who surrender, going against every rule of engagement, and asks if they continue down that road, what will become of them. And then Saul says that that's the leader that the rebellion needs. Right. Where is that fire when her people need her the most? They end up turning the droid off at Mothma's request. So.
And, I see both sides to this. Saul gets results.
Yeah.
But at what cost? Yeah. And Mothma makes that case. Do we really want to go down this path? But when you're at war for your very existence, at what point does the enemy's trying to kill you?
Yeah.
At what point? I don't know. That's a tough one.
Sure, it's a tough break, but I mean, I guess you kind of look internally with yourself, and you find out, I guess, a lot about who you are in a situation like
Absolutely.
that. Absolutely.
In the next scene, we get Hera, and she's outlining the infiltration of the communications relay. And there's, obviously some dissent from Ezra on how to handle the situation, because he's, coming of age, and now he's got all,
Yeah.
So he's saying that they should be taking more direct action. After Hera leaves, Kanan comes in and asks, what's wrong with him, and she says that Ezra's
her,
and she says that Ezra's right. Kanan says that's Guerrera talking, of course. Ezra and Sabine are jumping out of the Ghost with jetpacks, and Chopper's following them. They can't start their jetpacks until they drop to a certain level, and it leads to them falling too fast, and they crash into the tower's dish. Ezra manages to stop himself and catch Sabine using the Force, but Chopper comes crashing down into the center of the dish. Excuse me. Inside, an Imperial officer notices some static on one of his monitors. So Ezra and Sabine help Chopper up, and Sabine says he's complaining, so he's fine. Sounds like my kids. They radio back that they've made it safely, and Hera tells them to install the spike, which is going to allow them to tap into the communications.
Yeah, so at that moment, Zeb detects an incoming light cruiser headed for the relay. Hera passes on the warning. Ezra tries and play it off like he's Officer Brom Titus, because basically Chopper's patching through.
Right.
But it's Brom Titus who's on the cruiser.
Right.
So he's basically like, what kind of game's being played here? The communications dish starts moving, and they almost slide off the edge of it. And now they're just sitting there staring at the cruiser, because now the dish is facing the direction of the cruiser. So, Ezra does his typical hey, wave kind of thing. They try to make the best of a bad situation with detonators. Ezra's holding off stormtroopers that have come out to defend the relay, and Sabine's placing the detonators around the dish. Chopper manages to change direction of the dish, and everyone falls over and starts sliding towards the middle again. The Imperial cruiser detects the Ghost coming in at a high speed and deploys a couple of TIE defenders, so the Ghost can't stop to pick them up. Ezra calls Chopper to tilt the dish again, and this time Sabine's catching Ezra before he can go off the edge. Right. So the stormtroopers, they end up plummeting to their demise.
Yeah, and Kanan has Hera drop the ghost into the fog of the planet to get, to basically throw the TIE defenders off. As Zeb, hits them, but they're too strong. Kanan then guides Hera to safety using the Force, and one of the TIEs is destroyed trying to keep sight of the ghost. Another ship comes in at high speed and fires on the Imperial cruiser. The deflectors are now down on the cruiser, so Titus orders them to level out so they can attempt to fire on the new ship. Back at the Ghost, the other TIE manages to get in front of the Ghost and come from the opposite direction, but Zeb's firing manages to put it into a spin, and it crashes. The new ship stops by Ezra and Sabine, and when the door opens, who is it? Of course, it's Guerrera. He drops out some extra explosives onto the dish and tells them they shouldn't think too long before jumping on board.
Yeah, so the cruiser is about ready to follow Saul's ship, but the explosion from the dish basically engulfs the cruiser as well, and they end up going down.
Yep.
Hera tries to get a hold of Ezra and Sabine, and Ezra radios back to let them know they're safe, and Saul tells her to relax, he's got them. Hera clearly is not happy, and when they get out of the atmosphere, she wants to meet up alongside of them so she can get her team. But Two Tubes, who's piloting the ship, says something to Saul, and right then a Star Destroyer shows up at that time and releases TIE fighters. Saul says that'll have to wait. He says they might enjoy fighting. He tells Ezra and Sabine they might enjoy fighting with a real army for a change. And then Saul's ship goes into hyperspace. Zeb asks where they're going, and Hera says she's not worried about where they're going, but who they're going with. And then they go into hyperspace. So that ends the episode 3, and then season 4, episode 4, and the Name of the Rebellion Part 2 picks up right where it left off. What's up? I've got Roger looking at me with questioning.
Okay, yes. Anyway, so the episode picks up at Saul's ship in hyperspace, and he's convinced that Ezra and Sabine, he's convinced Ezra and Sabine to help him with the mission that he needs them for. He knows they're good at infiltrating Imperial facilities, and he just saved their lives, so he's going to use that and use them for leverage. There's some kind of cargo shipment at this facility that he needs to get his eyes or hands on, and we'll definitely hear about that in a minute.
Yeah, they arrive at this facility, and Sabine says it looks like a normal civilian facility. Saul replies that it's what the Empire wants people to think. They all hide in a cargo container that's being put onto a civilian cargo transport by Chopper. The transport carrying the cargo in question, like this is the transport that has the cargo Saul's interested in. After they get out of the container, they start looking things over. Saul finds some crates with materials used for building Star Destroyers and other Imperial weaponry. Ezra talks about how that could come from any colony or planet, but Ezra does note he thought he heard some singing, but no one else really seemed to notice.
And so they leave the cargo bay and go into a hallway and immediately have to stand back out of the view of a couple of stormtroopers. Sabine questions why there are stormtroopers on a civilian ship, and says there may be something to Saul's theory. Saul then asks Chopper to search the manifest to see what he can find, and Chopper tells him an Imperial military shuttle is in hold 12, and Ezra agrees. Of course, that's where the cargo ship is. That the cargo ship is more than it seems. Saul asks Chopper to find out where they're going. Chopper says they're going to the Tanis sector, and Sabine says that that's just empty space and there's no settlements or stations out there. Saul thinks it may be the perfect hiding place. Ezra says it could be just a rendezvous point, and Chopper then says that Base 17 is a restricted area, so that's where they go, of course.
Yeah, so they get to Base 17. Chopper opens the door, and the stormtroopers tell him to go away. It's a restricted area. Chopper then zaps one of the stormtroopers and encourages them to give chase, and when they do, the others come out from above to take them out, and then they drag the stormtroopers back into the cargo bay with them. Saul tells the others to find out what they're hiding. Sabine opens up one of the cargo pods to find a whole bunch of prisoners. Ezra says it looks like the intel was right, but Saul says the intel was about some cargo, not about prisoners. Ezra claims that they can still help the prisoners. Saul questions the prisoners on if they know anything about special cargo on board, and one of them says they know something. They don't know anything about special cargo, but they did overhear some troopers talking about the Jedi system, so it could have come from there, whatever it was.
Right. And, of course, we know what's in the Jedi system.
Yeah.
It turns out that all of the prisoners are power technicians or reactor mechanics. The group talks about the security and secrecy of moving the prisoners, and Saul immediately thinks that something else is hidden there, and they need to find out. Ezra agrees, but they need to get the prisoners out of the line of fire first. They decide to try to disable the hyperdrive and then jettison the prisoners in escape pods. Chopper warns that there are some incoming stormtroopers, and Ezra has the prisoners go back to where they were to act like they're still contained, but not all the prisoners get in before the stormtroopers see them, and they open the door back up to ask who let the prisoners out. They notice some white on the floor behind them, and then the rebels come out to take them by surprise. Saul stuns them from the top of the containers, and they set out about disabling the hyperdrive.
Yeah, so on their way there, Ezra once again hears what he thinks is a song coming from a particular door. Sabine opens it up, and we see death troopers, a whole bunch of death troopers. She immediately throws some smoke detonators, and Ezra opens up his lightsaber as they all run into the room. Chopper is getting prisoners onto escape pods and is thanked by one of them. And then back in the death trooper room, there's just smoke everywhere. Ezra's running interference, essentially, while the others are taking the troopers out, like, from behind. One of Saul's blaster shots hits some, like, what looks like a big block in the middle of the room, and it has a bit of electrical effect on the object. And then one of the death troopers says, "It's been compromised," and they run out of the room.
Right. After the smoke clears, they look at the item. The force field that Saul shot removed now reveals a huge kyber crystal. I mean, it's bigger than all four of them put together. Ezra says that he knew the singing sounded familiar. It's what called to his crystal for his lightsaber. Sabine says they should put their lightsabers away, as one that big is likely to be unstable. One of the death troopers that ran out of the hold radios the captain to notify them that there are rebels led by Saul on board, and they've taken hold. They've taken hold 6 and have the cargo.
Yeah, hold of base 6, I think I was.
Yeah. The trooper says to alert Director Krennic and alert Imperial Command. The captain asks if Saul meant to take the cargo, and the trooper states they'll not let that happen, and to gather all security personnel and meet her there. Then the trooper says, in the meantime, purge the escape pods. Nobody leaves the vessel.
Yeah, so they start sending out the escape pods, and Chopper notices that some of these doors are closing, and they're, like, shooting off by themselves. So he gets the prisoners back out of the ones that they were in, because they were already sitting in escape pods, and he was going to send those out once the hyperdrive was disabled. But they were still going through hyperspace.
Right.
So he knew that was an issue and got them out of there. So Ezra says, it's back to Ezra, and he says they need to stop the ship and get the prisoners out. Saul says no, they need to let the crystal go to where it's headed so they can find out what they are building. Sabine says they can't risk the crystal getting back into the Empire's hands, and Saul says she's right about that too. Ezra asks him to guard the crystal, and the two of them will head to the engine room to stop the ship. They do the classic shot where, like, Saul looks to the side and then back towards the camera where Sabine and Ezra ran off, clearly telegraphing to the viewer he's going to do something.
Right. So they get ready to drop the ship out of hyperdrive after taking out a few stormtroopers, and Ezra gets hit with a stun blast. And then Saul comes walking up to do the same to Sabine. He basically, stunned them both. The death troopers get back to base 6 and blow the door off, but the cargo's gone. The captain lets the death trooper, officer probably.
Yeah, I don't know if it's an officer. They were leading the show.
Yeah.
There, what it was.
I know that they lost contact with the engine room. The troopers then head that direction.
Yeah, so we get to the engine room, and Saul has the crystal, and Ezra and Sabine are in restraints. He notifies 2 tubes over his comm that they're going to go to the Taunus sector and to meet him at a hatch near the starboard engines. Sabine and Ezra come to eventually, and they talk about Saul's betrayal. Saul needs to find out what's going on and thinks there is a super weapon being created. They arrive in the Taunus sector, so they get out of hyperspace, and it's just a Star Destroyer sitting there. So he's disappointed because he thinks this is going to be their, like, big, reveal. Right. The Star Destroyer, they're aware of the rebel presence on board. They've been notified by the ship, and they notice a rebel ship coming in, which is 2 tubes flying in. And the ship lands against the cruiser, so the Star Destroyer doesn't want to fire because they're afraid of hitting the cargo ship with the crystal on board, because they obviously know what's on there, so they don't want to hit it. So they just kind of let things take their course.
And back on board, Saul wants to leave. Ezra says they can't leave the prisoners. Saul says, when you've lost your home planet, that he has nothing, you realize what's at stake. Ezra says they still do have, something. They've got the people on the ship and that they need them. Saul says it's his choice and then uses Ezra's lightsaber to cut into an engine and then shoots another, sending the crystal into electrical fits, basically. Ezra recognizes that he's turning it into a bomb, and so Saul tells Ezra he won't let the Empire use it, so he better get off the ship, and then the stormtroopers and death troopers arrive in the room.
Yeah, so two of the stormtroopers are taken out by the crystal's like electrical current. Sabine yells at Saul to free them from the restraints, which he does, and he tells him it's their last chance. Ezra tells him that he can fight his battles and they'll fight theirs. So I guess at this point, Ezra's clearly decided, all right, that's not for me.
Right.
Saul says, "Farewell, my friend. I hope we meet again," and escapes.
And I'm sure they will meet again.
Yeah. The Death Trooper tells the remaining stormtroopers to abandon ship immediately.
Right, and then Two-Tube flies off with Saul, and the Star Destroyer detects no crystal on board with their scanner, so the Star Destroyer moves in towards the cargo craft so they can secure it. On their way back to find the prisoners, Ezra radios to Chopper to radio Hera and let them know that they're in the Tana system. Then to jam all communications, get the prisoners to the shuttle, the Imperial shuttle that they had discovered earlier. Chopper does all of that, including taking out 2 stormtroopers after a prisoner distraction. The Death Trooper and stormtroopers that remain see that the prisoners are trying to commandeer the shuttle, and they attempt to take it back, but Ezra and Sabine, they're able to get into the bay. Ezra takes them all out. And the episode, shows how strong Ezra is really becoming with the Force.
Yeah.
I mean, he's learned a lot from Kanan.
Yeah, he took them out pretty easily. He jumped up on that bay. He knocked the 2 stormtroopers over with crates and stuff with his force, and came down and basically drop kicked the Death Trooper.
Yep.
Yeah,
he's definitely grown a lot since last season for sure.
Yeah, so Sabine pilots the shuttle just past the Star Destroyer, and then puts the destroyer between them and the cargo cruiser, so the destroyer takes the brunt of the impact. Because they couldn't get into hyperspace in time, the explosion still manages to disable their craft, but the Ghost shows up right afterwards. The power technicians, they choose to enlist with the rebellion instead of going back to their homes.
Right.
Kanan dislikes the news of a second Kyber crystal they've stopped from getting into the Empire's hands. Sabine talks about how Saul thought they were trying to weaponize it, and the episode ends with Ezra saying, "What if Saul's right? What if the Empire is on the verge of winning a war that the rebellion doesn't even realize has begun?"
And that really is, the case, especially when we get into, Rogue One and A New Hope. They have, they're definitely ill prepared to go to battle. Now they get lucky and they destroy the Death Star. They get the plans off of Scarif. But if it weren't for that luck, it would definitely be severely outmatched. And I really enjoyed these 2 episodes. And the reason I was pausing a minute ago is because I was thinking, oh man, what about episodes 5 and 6? But yeah, we just can't fit them all. We just can't fit them all in here.
Yeah, I haven't seen them yet either.
Oh, you haven't seen them yet?
No.
They were both fantastic. I mean, I think that they were the best of the first 6.
Okay, all right.
I think 5 and 6 are incredible. So definitely watch those.
Well, I liked these, so I'm really looking forward to them.
Yeah, these were good. So anyway, thanks again, guys, for listening to the show. You can support the show with, as little as $1 an episode at resistingempirepodcast.com/support. You can do that with Federal Reserve notes. You can do that with Bitcoin, with Dash. We'll take anything. Firstborn kids, diamonds, whatever. And don't forget to check out our Facebook page. You can get to that at resistingempirepodcast.com/Facebook. And you can also go to our Facebook group for Pax Libertas Productions at resistingempirepodcast.com/Facebook group. And so anyway, until next time.
May the non-initiation of Force be with you.
Thank you for listening to Resist the Empire. Find us online at resisttheempirepodcast.com and on Twitter at Empire Resistor. Never miss an episode by subscribing on any podcatcher or by going to resisttheempirepodcast.com/subscribe. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.